All right, as Daft Punk says, one more time, all night, all night. Oh, sorry, I got lost there. So one more time, one more pre-writing, one more little bit, and this is discussing significance. And so this is really important to an essay. At this point, you have, let's check it out, okay? Um, Here's why I say every essay needs three things: your main point or your thesis. And in an essay like this, it may not be just the one sentence. When we move on to our next essays, we're going to be like, we want a thesis, one clear sentence, boom, up front, here's my main point. We're going to want to do that. But with this, and when you look at these samples, there's very few of them where you would say, oh, that's the one sentence where all the, that's the overall main point. Generally, it's more implied. It's like, okay, I get this. When we look at Papi Hueto, or we look at connecting with history, or we look at buried treasure, any of these, the not so hidden treasure, we look at any of these samples, what you're going to see is often it's more about kind of that overall feeling that is given to us. So it's not necessarily, but it does have a main point. We've got some main point about this object meaning more than just a book on a shelf, right? So there's some deeper meaning, and that's the big main point, and it depends on the essay. So you've got to have that. So we're going to have that, and that's probably pretty explicit in your evidence. Which in this case, your evidence is your details, your description, your story. So really, we've already kind of got you picked your thing for a reason because it has a certain meaning to you, more than just this is a book, or more than just this is any cell phone. This is about this thing that keeps my life organized, that helps make my day to day easier, that makes me happy, that I don't feel like a big dummy for forgetting my friends' birthdays. Okay, so that's that main point. If we tell that story and we have that description, that supports it. So at the very first pre-writing, I said my book is very important. You're like, okay, yeah, whatever, right? But then once I get into that description, I get into that story, you're like, oh, okay, I can see how that book's really important to you, right? And how Amy's very important to you. But if we just stop there, what we have is we have this really great narrative. We have a really great story with a description. Yay! But we want this to transcend into an essay. And so almost every essay, well really every essay has some bit of discussion or interpretation of the significance. Why is it important or notable? What's the big so what? I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's like, okay, you told me that story, so what? I think I can read your stories and go, yeah, here's what this means. But that would just be me doing it through my experience. Kelly doing it through her lens of her experience of being a woman born when I was born, going through the experiences I've gone through, seeing what I'm seeing, knowing what I know, that stuff. That's not your experience, right? You can guess the kind of significance of my book with Amy, but then we're just playing, I hope my readers get it. And we don't want to play that game. We want to say, you know what? I got stuff in my head and my heart, and I want to get it across to you, dear reader. And so, in that case, we have to explain it. If we're doing a formal paper, we're going to have that clear, here's my main point. We're going to have support and evidence, maybe some research. It might be using our life experience too. But then we've got to have the so what. And that's where, if we just had all the research, say we're doing a research paper, so it's not about our personal experience, we'd be saying, okay, they've done this research here, we know this fact, that. If we just stop there, then it's an informative writing. And so, yeah, we could call it an informative essay because it's longer, but, we wouldn't have that. So, what does it mean to you? And that's the real key part that we can't. It's like making a chocolate cake without chocolate. It doesn't work, right? It's not a chocolate cake, it's something different. So this is what makes that essay that essay. Essay comes from the French. It means to attempt to attempt to explain, really. And so I'm attempting to say, here's what's in my head, here's what's in my heart, not just what my experience was, but what it means, and get that across. And so that's what this third step is. This third step is, you know, taking your evidence, your description, and that kind of part, and explaining your interpretation, right? So when discussing why your object is significant, you want to think about, why does it matter? What role has it played in your life? Or what time does it take you back to? What you learned from it, what you carry from the person that, from that object who gave it to you, or who it belongs to, or when you got it. I can't come up with questions that fit everybody's object because I haven't taken mind reading classes yet, okay? Because I don't know everybody's object, right? So you've got to think about, not just, I have this thing, but why is it important, right? Why does this matter to me so much? Why is this old book, and it's old, and I don't read paper books anymore. I love my Kindle. I'm like, if I read a paper book, I'm like, oh, a paper book. Oh, God. I can't make the font bigger. Okay. So why is that important to me? So here's my best try at that. And I think it's a little English teachery, like fancy pantsy. But I did write this when I was closer to graduating from college, from graduate school. So I was in that mind that I was a little more fancy pantsy, okay? So, we go through different stages in our life. And that's where I was at. So let's take a look. There's no small bit of irony that Elmer Gantry is the story of a small-town con man who works his trade by building lies around himself and convincing others the truth of his intentions, only to find out when his con comes apart that he has grown to love those he tricked, and he has betrayed his only friends. I spent too many years convincing myself that I needed no one and that I was self-sufficient. However, just as in the moment of deliverance in many great stories, mine came in the form of an unassuming heroine. Amy was my hero and my salvation. I'm not saying my life would be over without her and that I would have sank to the depths of despair, but it certainly would not have followed the track it has, and I would be diminished without our friendship and other friendships that came as a result of the lessons she taught me. Like the book, Amy has inspired me and made me smile and laugh. We have shared adventures together and apart. We have plodded through the daily journey of life, hoping for the semester to end or the next great thing to come along. We have sometimes grown apart and now may not be as close of friends as we once were, but despite that fact, the depth and sincerity of our friendship has been a constant in my adult life, and I don't cross a significant bridge without some thought and word from Amy. So that's really, what does this book mean? Well, my sister closest to me in age is 7 years older than me. That means when I was 7, she was 14. And what does a 14-year-old want to do with a 7-year-old girl? Like, get out of my room, right? Mom, she's bugging me. So, I never got to know my sisters till I was older, but Amy's like the sister I never had, right? The best friend I never had. As a kid growing up, I really was I had my nose in the books and I read about best friends, but like really never had one. Whatever. Don't feel sorry for me. I had a very blessed life. But when you first looked at this book in the first pre-writing, you didn't know all that, right? So all of a sudden, this book, Elmer Gantry, is more than just the story about this guy who the very first line says, Gantry was drunk. Elmer Gantry was drunk. He was eloquently drunk, lovingly and pugnaciously drunk, right? About this drunk dude who cons these people. Yeah, it's an interesting, funny, touching, loving, wonderful story. But it's also, when I look at that book, that's like the history of Amy and me, of finding somebody who was like, I'm like, man, who I could really connect with. And that's cool. Yeah, we don't all get that. We don't get that for as long as I've had it with Amy. So, yeah, that's my significance. And you probably wouldn't have gotten all of that just from reading the narrative, right? And the description. And that's why it's so important to move on to this. What is the connection? What is it, that really means to you? So this is the part where you just get philosophical. Man, let your hair hang down and get philosophical. What does the story or stories you wrote in the last pre-writing show about not just the object, but the person who owns it, or the time in your life it represents, or whatever it was, right? It can be so many things. And you may have already started doing some of that in your story writing. So you can grab those sentences and just continue that, or leave them there and just think about that and write that in your pre-writing, okay? If it's a person or a specific time, how was that important? How does it show through that? What does this reveal about the person or time's character, nature, significance, yours, your mom's, Amy's, right? How has it changed you in some way? Those are just examples, because again, I can't come up with exact, I don't know. I've been doing this essay for over 15 years and never read one that was just like the other one, right? Whatever you say is correct. I just get to help you say it better. So you've got to think about, what is it that this object represents to you? And it can be, mine's a little more emotional, but I keep giving the phone example. It can be a little more practical, because sometimes just being able to, make sure we don't forget significant dates and things like that is part of being okay with life and just getting through day to day, and that relief of, okay, I did what I needed to do. And that's huge too, right? That's just as huge as, somebody who's there to support us. You know, I would say the people are a little more important, but I mean, that's another big thing in life. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's your job. Discuss why the object you chose is important. What does the story show you about not just the object, but the person who owns it, whether it's you, somebody else, it was given to you, passed down to you, it represents a time or whatever, something like that. Or how is that important? How does that person show through that? What does it reveal about some time, nature, significance? Just those give you ideas. Do at least a couple of paragraphs. And same thing with the narrative. If you get to where you're like, I don't know what else to say, well, another thing that might be important to me is this, or another thing that is special about it is this. And you might have a paragraph and just kind of an awkward list or something, and you may decide later not to use that, right? You're not committed to any of this stuff in the pre-writings. It's to get you ideas and get you there, okay? And then once we've written down, then we get to say, I like that part, or no, what was I thinking? No, right? Whatever. So that's where that is, okay? So once you've done all three pre-writings, you basically have the ingredients for your essay. And then the next video we'll talk about, how do you think about putting these together, drafting it, putting them together, deciding what to keep, what to throw out, all that kind of stuff. So there we go. One more time. Cool beans. Keep on keeping on. Take care. Bye-bye.